Yeah, I think we can go ahead and get started if everyone's got the disclaimer. So, my name is Sam. Thank you very much for coming to my presentation. This is going to be an introduction to ZVM installation and upgrade. So, a little bit of background about me. I joined IBM just about 11 months ago. Early July is going to be my 1-year anniversary. Previously, I was an intern working with some folks on the install and packaging team, and I guess they liked me because they kept me. So I'm now a developer for ZVM install. And so this presentation is really by a beginner for beginners. I know it can be really intimidating to step into some of these red books and manuals and such like that, and the installation guide can look a little daunting the first time you open that nice 300-page PDF. So the goal of this session isn't, you will likely not walk out of here, I'm very sorry, being able to install your own system right away. The goal here is to demystify the installation guide a little bit, to get you started, to make you feel a little bit more confident if you decide to approach it. So please don't take this presentation as the be-all, end-all. There's a lot of steps that I don't cover. There's a lot of tips that you can find in various places, which I will link at the end of this presentation. But this is a starting point. So just to feel out the room, has anyone here done a ZVM traditional installation before? Beautiful. All right, so you're already experts. No, okay, I'm seeing shaking heads. All right. By any chance, has anyone done an upgrade installation? Oh, there we go, okay. Yeah, I see some wary hands raising.
A modified one.
A modified one? Oh yeah, there's plenty of those. So I'm glad to hear that some people have some experience, but I'll start right from the beginning. So we're gonna do a quick overview, just level set for those who might not have approached an installation before. Then we're gonna take 2 examples, and these are sort of the most current stripped down examples that I could think of. Like the most straightforward, if your system has no complications, getting up to the current release level. So we're going to do a traditional installation of a ZVM 7.4 system 2nd level. You'll know what that means soon if you don't already. And an upgrade installation of 7.3 to 7.4. Then I'm going to share some of my newbie tips and tricks with you that I hard won through blood, sweat, and tears. So let's start off with an overview. There are 2 different types of installation covered in the install guide. The first one is a traditional installation. So you are putting a ZVM system where there was no ZVM system before, or an SSI cluster. You can do this first level, where you install directly onto your logical partition, essentially directly onto the hardware. You've got a Z server, you want a ZVM system, let's make that happen. You're going to be doing a lot of things in the HMC for this. You're going to be using that integrated console. And our second level, which is the example we're going to go through today, if you already have an existing first level ZVM system installed into your LPAR, your logical partition, and you want to install a guest VM on top of that system using its TCP/IP stack. It's sort of like building up a house where there was none before. You've got this land, you've done your preparations, and now you're constructing something brand new. You can customize it according to your needs. You're going to install it, in our examples, to a set of DASD volumes. And it includes some of these pre-installed license programs, things like Dermaint, RACF, that you can enable at any time and configure according to your system's needs. The other type of installation is upgrade installation. So again, you've got an existing ZVM system, similar to a 2nd level install. You have an existing system already, and you want to bring that up to the next release level. So in current terms, that would mean you have a 7.2 or a 7.3 system that you want to bring up to 7.4. This is done by installing a temporary work system, 2nd level, and moving that release code down from the 2nd level system and making it a part of your existing system. So I sort of has anyone seen the movie Up? Has anyone not seen the movie Up? All right. So I compare it to that. You've already got your house built, it's constructed, it's strong, you got all your furniture in there. You don't want to go through the process of moving. So why not tie some balloons and lift it up to the level where you want it to be? So for our examples today, we are going to be doing a non-SSI installation because, like I said, I wanted to start with the most stripped down, easy example just to get some of these concepts into our head, into our muscle memory. So we're not going to use SSI. But I did want to touch on it, touch on the concept. An SSI, or a single system image cluster, that's a multi-system environment. So you have multiple ZVM systems that are sharing some resources, sharing some volumes. The benefit of this, of course, being that you can move, being live guest relocation, you can move from one system to another while they're running. And in case you were curious, this is what some of the differences look like when you're doing an SSI installation. So if you're doing a traditional SSI installation, some of the volumes that you use, which we will cover in depth, don't you worry, are going to be shared. Some of them are not going to be. So you might need a different amount of volumes in order to install two. You can install up to 4 members at once, and then if you want to go up to a larger cluster, you can add members up to 8 on the current release. And then for an upgrade installation, you're going to upgrade each system one at a time, but there are certain modified steps throughout the install guide that it's maybe some you have to do for each system, some you don't have to repeat, some you wait till the end. So just look out for, if you're doing an SSI upgrade installation, it'll say it right at the beginning. And all of your members have to start at the same level. So if you're running a mixed release cluster, you have to get them all to 7.2 or all to 7.3 because, again, they're sharing resources. And when you install that work system, which, again, we will cover in depth, don't worry if you're a little lost right now, that's going to also be shared throughout the members. So these DASD volumes that I keep talking about, what's that going to look like? So if you've got a ZVM system up and running, this actually is an SSI system because I wanted to illustrate which volumes are shared or not. If you had just one non-SSI system, then just ignore all these green disks on the far right. That's these 2 rows. But for each individual ZVM system, you have this member residence volume. It's like where your system lives. It's where you're going to IPL your system from. It has all these various things that help your system do the things it needs to do. You're going to have paging and spool space for the system to work with. You're going to have this common volume, which includes things like your system configuration, your source directory. And again, if this were an SSI cluster, that would be shared among the members. So they all know what the system configuration looks like because, again, they have to work with each other, so they got to know this stuff. And they will share your directory entries. What is going to be most interesting to us is these release disks. So 1 set per release per cluster. So if you're running a 7.2 system, then you're going to have this 7.2 release disk attached to your system. And then if you later do an upgrade to, say, 7.4 in this case, then you're now going to have a 7.4 release disk attached to your system or to your cluster. So these release disks, they do stack on top of each other. So every time you upgrade your system, you're adding release disks to the system. So are there any questions at this point before we start moving on? Yeah.
Do the 7.2 disks go away?
When you do an upgrade installation?
Eventually?
No.
They stay there?
They do stay.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll cover that in more detail when we get to the example, but they do stay with the system.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Any other questions before we move on to examples? All right. So our first example is a traditional installation, 7.4, second level, non-SSI. So just to review what each of those things is, traditional installation means putting a ZVM system where there was no ZVM system before. 7.4 is our most recent release. Second level means that you have a ZVM system installed onto your hardware, onto your LPAR, and our new system is going to go on top of that one. It's going to run as a guest of the first system. Non-SSI means it's only one system. We're not clustering any systems together. We're not doing anything too funky. So if you are going to be constructing a new house where there is no house before, what is the first thing you want to do? Anybody have guesses?
Got to clear the lot, build a foundation.
Clear the lot, build a foundation. Good thoughts. How about even before that? Even before you physically get onto the lot?
Oh, you got to figure out just what you're going to need.
Yes. Great answer. You need a materials list. There you go. Thank you. I should have made you an audience plant. Yeah. All right, so we have some general requirements that you're going to need regardless of what type of installation you're doing, first or second level. You're going to need some way to get your ZVM product onto your system. There are different ways you can do this. You can use physical DVD or USB drives. You can use an FTP server. But the way we're going to choose to do it, again, because we're doing the simplest, most stripped down example, is a CMS formatted mini disk. So we have ordered our product via ShopZ. We have created a disk large enough to hold that product, and we have put the product onto that CMS formatted mini disk. We're also going to need a supported processor, some hardware that can run it, and a 3270 terminal. And again, we're going to need some DASD volumes. So those common volumes, member volumes, and release volumes that I will remind you of several times. Don't worry, because it took me a while to get it into my head in the first place. Yeah, so we will have some DASD volumes to install to. For this example, again, we're going to use 3390, a very common type of DASD volume. You can use FBA, emulated FBA on SCSI volumes, only if you're doing non-SSI, but don't have to stress too much about that right now. But do be aware that your order on ShopZ will come with different install media depending on whether you choose 3390 or FBA. So we have 3390. In theory, before doing this, we downloaded the 3390 install media, and we have put it on that CMS formatted mini disk that's accessible from our existing first level system. All right, now we've got a materials list. What is the next thing we might want to do when we're building a house? Again, before we even lay down a foundation. We've got all of our materials, we've got an empty lot, and we don't know what we're going to put there. What do you want to do? Any guesses?
Order supplies.
Oh, I heard order supplies, I heard something else?
Land installation.
Plan? Yeah, I like that one. We are going to need some blueprints. So for the traditional installation, there are a bunch of worksheets included in the install guide. I've made a flowchart for reference, again, because it can boggle the mind a little bit when you're first starting out. So this worksheet 1 and 4, we're going to be doing regardless of what type of traditional installation. Again, our traditional second level installation. We're going to need our system basics. We need a name for the system, a password. We need to know what type of DASD we're installing to. So again, we chose 3390 for this example. And we chose non-SSI. And we're going to want to know where we want to install those pre-installed license programs like Dermate, RACF, that type of thing. We're also going to need to do worksheet 4, which is our installation source. Where are these install files coming from? So if you remember during our materials phase, we ordered them on ShopZ and we put them onto a CMS formatted mini disk. So that's where they are for our example. Now, we chose a non-SSI installation, and we chose to do it on 3390. So the only worksheet we have to do is worksheet number 2, which is where are those DASD volumes, and what do you want to call them, essentially. The worksheet, if we had chosen FBA, the worksheet would be more or less the same. We would also need some information on where to define the volumes if we hadn't already. And if we did want to do SSI, we would have to do one additional worksheet just to determine the names and the information for each individual member in the cluster. But for us, easy peasy, we just have one extra worksheet to do. We're going to need some more blueprints in terms of our DASD layout as well. So what I was telling you before, this is one system. This is our member volumes, which is where our system lives, where we start up the system from. where all of its system-specific information lives. We have paging and spool space, and we have common volumes, which is space for things like the system configuration. So in case we ever wanted to turn this into an SSI cluster in the future, we would have all of our configuration information right there ready to go for other members to pull from. And then we have the release volumes. Since we're doing a brand new, fresh installation of 7.4, we're only going to have 7.4 release volume. So that ends up totaling up to 6 volumes. 1 common volume, 2 release volumes, 1 system residence volume, 1 paging, 1 spool. So we're going to need a total of 6. All right, now that we have done all of our planning, what might be our next step? I'm looking over here at something that I heard earlier.
So foundations next.
Yep, we're going to lay our foundations. So it's time to start setting up for installation. Our first step, we need to load those files onto the CMS mini disk and make sure that's accessible from our existing first level system. We want to attach those DASD that we chose, those 6 volumes that we have reserved for this new system, and link those to our system. We're going to run a little something called instapipe, followed by an actual pipe command, which is going to decode, unpack, write some of our files to one of our mini disks, our 2222 mini disk. Then we are going to IPL CMS, re-access that source mini disk. Am I putting anyone to sleep yet? Unfortunately, installation is a lot of checklists, which, again, is one of the things I want to demystify for you. If you open up a huge document, it looks like a ton of content and a ton of stuff to understand, but a lot of it is just checklists like this. It's copy and paste this command out of the install guide into your system. It's following these flowcharts and figuring out what are the needs of my system. So it's not so bad once you get into it. There you go. Here, I'll take
Would
this
the
one.
size of the disks be general Mod 9s or Mod 27s?
For this example, we're using Mod 9s.
Mod 9s?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I always wanted to know, what is the instapipe command actually doing? Because it always just returns and never has any issues, and you have to
Yeah.
run it or else things blow up. But what is it doing?
Yeah, it does, I believe, a little bit of the preparation, setting up some of those mini disks. That's funny. I asked my teammates that very same question before doing this presentation so I could put it on there, and a lot of them said, run it. So I think it pulls rabbits out of hats maybe and uses a magic wand and some stuff like that.
Prestidigitation.
Yeah, but if I get an answer, I will follow up with you on that later.
Cool.
Right, so once we've done some of our prestidigitation, once we've pulled our rabbits out of our hats and maybe turned someone's hair green, we're going to need to run DVD Prime. So what DVD Prime does, it loads some of our necessary files onto the mini disks where those files need to be. Things that are going to make our install run smoothly. Again, all 3 of these commands, I pulled them straight out of the install guide. You copy and paste them. I believe I needed to type in ECKD because that's our DASD type. So all of these are pulled straight out of the install guide. So if it's maybe 5 o'clock on a Friday and you want to do one more productive thing, I would advise doing that. Very easy. Now, when we're building up our foundations, it's time to return to our blueprints. So we're going to run this command instaplan traditional because we're doing a traditional installation. And it's going to bring up a panel that looks something like this. And this panel, again, it's got a lot of questions on it, looks scary at first, don't panic. That is exactly what we put on our worksheet 1. We are prepared for this. That is why we do a lot of preparation before we start laying down our foundations. So it's going to ask us where we want to install those licensed programs, what language we want for our system, what DASD type we chose to install to, what are we doing SSI or non-SSI, what do we want to name the system, and what do we want the password to be. So a lot of that foundational installation information. Once we've done that, it's going to show this screen. It's going to say, are you sure you know what you're doing? Are you in sound mind to install a ZPM system? Are you prepared for the responsibility of what you're bringing into the world? And if all this information looks fine, you can hit yes and continue. And it's going to take you to this screen. This is those 6 volumes that we set aside earlier are common volumes, are the rel vols are release volumes, and the res is the system residence, the spool, and the page. So those 6 volumes that we've already chosen, already located, we just have to tell the system where we want to put them. And it's going to ask whether you want to format them. Yes is a safe answer. It's just going to clear off whatever was on those disks and replace it with whatever it needs to be replaced with. So again, directly applying those worksheets that we've already done to these panels. And now, if we've done all our planning, we've got all our permits, and we've laid down a foundation, what are we now ready to do? Start building. I heard start building from a few places, and you are absolutely right. We're going to run the install command, and we're going to let it start building up our system. So once you run the install command, it's going to run for about 20 minutes. You don't need to put in any input, but I recommend keeping an eye on it just to make sure that everything's completing successfully, that nothing unexpected happens. So if you want to go for a coffee break, make sure that your computer stays awake. Maybe give it a babysitter. Because again, you don't want your ID to disconnect in the middle of this command, and you want to keep an eye on things and make sure it's running smoothly. Now, we have a brand new, beautiful home for our system to live in. So good work, everyone. Congratulations. Woo! Yeah, let's take a round of applause. But we've got a very big, beautiful, empty home. We do not have a bed frame yet. So something like what happened when I moved to IBM 11 months ago. But that's another story. So we're going to want to add some of those things specific to our system, bring in some of the furniture, and make this home our own. So we might want to create some utilities, configure a basic network connection, get some cable going. We're going to want to put some locks on the doors, or else Brian's going to come in here and take me away. So you're going to want to put some locks on the doors, set up an external security manager, create some procedures for backing up the system. Please, please, please back up your systems. Again, if something goes wrong during an installation or upgrade installation especially, it is very difficult to recover that system if you don't have good, recent, updated backups. And you can install some of those, or rather, enable some of those pre-installed licensed programs if you want to, things like Dermate. Does anyone have any further questions about the traditional installation example that we've done? Yes?
So, I'm trying to understand this. The traditional,
Yeah.
when you do it, you land it on, you put it in an LPAR and it's nothing there. Is that how that works?
That's the
Yeah.
first level, right?
Yeah, if you're doing the first level,
But
there,
it's
you
not-
haven't.
But it's nothing running in the first level, correct? That's the reason why you're putting that, that's the reason why we're doing that traditional install.
Well, yes, if you're doing a first level traditional install, you have nothing running on that LPAR, and by the time you finish that installation, there's a ZVM system running in there. So yeah, the example we did, we already have an LPAR with a ZVM system running in it, and we're installing one on top of that. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes?
Could you go back to one of the earlier screens where
Sure.
you did the planning? The very first step was to format a CMS disk.
Yep.
You've got nothing running. How do you do that? What's the process? It's step number one.
For step number 1 there. So first and foremost, I'm going to refer you to the install guide. There's a few pages of instructions on how to go about that. The long and the short of it is you want to create your mini disk, essentially what I've said, create your mini disk, format it, and put those files onto it. There's a lot of
Sure, I'm
details,
trying to understand
right.
where the programs are coming from.
If you're installing the first level, you need to use something else. You need to use FTP or a DVD or something.
Okay,
This
yeah,
is what we're
Yeah.
talking about here.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm just going to repeat it for the recording's sake. If you are installing first level, you'll need to use a different installation file source. For second level, you can use this mini disk that's accessible from the first level. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it sure is.
Awesome. Thank you, Clayton.
Sorry.
No, you're good. No, thank you. Any other questions at this point?
So you would utilize
Yeah.
that first level installation to do the CMS format as mini disc, right?
Yeah, you would use your existing,
Right.
the one you've already installed. Yeah,
Okay, got it.
it'd be a mini disk accessible to that system. Yeah. Any further questions, clarifications, comments, anything? Yeah.
This example uses 3390, but emulated FBA on SCSI volumes is supported for non-SSI only. And
Yes.
that's because,
Why it's supported for non-SSI only?
yeah.
That has a
That's-
couple of reasons.
Yeah.
So one of the core components we use to serialize disk access is reserve and release. This, for example, is a CKD feature only in the current implementation. So, for example, when you have a RACF database that you need to share over SSI, RACF itself is using reserves release to serialize the access to the database where all the other RACF components running inside the SSI. In a SCSI environment, we don't have a comparable mechanism using the virtualized or the virtual FBA bonus. Another thing is that we're using other advanced CKD features to serialize access to spool, for example, to ensure data integrity within the whole cluster.
But that's not a showstopper for SSI.
Well, you need shared spool volumes.
Oh, sure.
For-
Okay. So
for
it's
SSI.
not the architecture, but the lack of the reserve release.
So I mean, this is part of the architecture. Reserve release and the whole CCW chains are
Yeah.
part of the CKD.
If I'm understanding correctly, what you're telling me is you need the reserve release command, not tracks, records, codes, and keys.
Right, but this is really a part of the CKD architecture.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Gotcha. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Awesome. Any more questions or clarifications? All right. Then I'm going to take us ahead to our second example. Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah, this process, again, it can be a little mystifying to approach it for the first time. When I did my very first upgrade installation right on top of my very first traditional installation, I had to do the upgrade installation about 3 times because I bricked my system the first 2 times.
You didn't back it up?
No, I did back it up. That's why I was able to recover it and restart the procedure. So, again, don't feel discouraged. I'm going to hopefully demystify that process a little for you and give you some tools to go into it and not make any of the mistakes that I did. So our example is going to start with a 7.3 existing system. So imagine that we just went through that traditional installation procedure, which you're now all experts on. But instead of 7.4, we installed 7.3. And now we went, oh, darn it, I really want this system to be at the current release level. And it's also non-SSI. So you have your house that you've just built. It's at the 7.3 level. You've got all of your configurations exactly the way you want it.
Yeah, but no bed frames.
No, we have our bed frames in at this point.
Okay.
That's why we don't want to do the move. That's why the move is a little bit frustrating. And now you're living happily in your house. You look up the hill, and there's this beautiful new McMansion on the hill. And it's got all this brand new release code and these cool new features, and you want that for your system. But man, you would have to carry all of your stuff, all of those bed frames, all those locks on the door, that cable television, all the way up the hill to a brand new house. What if, instead, you could install a new system on the second level of your home and move your current system to the new level of code with minimal impact. So your house is still there, all of your furniture is right where you left it, you've just got all of those shiny new features in your home. And that is the upgrade installation process, also known as upgrade in place. Now, again, this is a little longer process, but the concept is almost similar to what we did with that traditional second level installation. So we're going to do a second level installation. We're going to put a system running as a guest of our current system. that runs at the new release level of code. So again, we're going to have those 6 DASD volumes that we used for that new system. And then we are going to move just the release level of code. We are going to make that a part of our existing system. So the rest of that second level system goes away, and we keep the release disks. So what the steps for that are going to look like, we're going to want to prepare the system, of course. It's all okay. We're going to prepare the system. We're going to install a work system. This is essentially a second level system, very similar to what we did in the first procedure, but we're going to refer to it as a work system so we don't mix it up. Again, luckily you're all experts in this procedure now, so we should have no problems. We're going to use our inst pipe, our dvd prime, our inst plan, and our install commands. We're going to back up the system. Please, don't make my mistakes. And then we are going to run our upgrade in 2 stages. During our first stage, we can still have production running. It's only during the second stage that production needs to be shut down, so that reduces the time of the outage that is needed to upgrade that system. Again, we're going to be backing up throughout this whole procedure so that if we have to back out at any point, we have the step before us all set to go. And yeah, if this were an SSI system, we would upgrade each member one at a time. So again, the first thing we are going to need.
Bill of materials?
Yes, thank you. I swear I'm going to wake you guys up with this one. I promise I'm going to wake you guys up. Shoot. Perfect. So we have the first most important thing we're going to need, an existing system to upgrade, naturally. So in order to do an upgrade to 7.4, we need that existing system to start at 7.2 or 7.3. If you have a system running an earlier release, you're going to need to upgrade it to either 7.2 or 7.3 first, and then do the next step of upgrade up to 7.4. So in this example, our system is running at 7.3, but this procedure could be performed with extremely slight modifications to a 7.2 system. Again, we have chosen to use a CMS formatted mini disk to hold those files for us because we're doing the most simple example, but there are other options. There are different file sources. Again, all this information is elaborated on in the install guide. And we are going to need supported hardware, a 3270 terminal, and the user ID that we are going to use for this procedure is called Mignate. By default, this ID ships from IBM with all of the permissions it needs in order to do everything that is documented in the install guide for the upgrade installation procedure. So by default, that user ID should be all set up with everything you need to get started. And we are going to need some new DASD. Again, the procedure uses a second level system and moves the release code down from that system. So we are again going to need enough DASD to install that work system in the first place. And our existing system will also need a little bit of extra space on its volumes because again, we're bringing in all these shiny new features, some brand new furniture that we found on Facebook Marketplace. So we're going to need a little bit of extra room for all this stuff that we bought on our shopping spree. There's a few restrictions, a lot of them center around SSI or some certain pre-installed licensed programs you might have enabled on your system. For this example, we're saying that we haven't done any of these things, but all of this is elaborated on in the install guide. I'm going to be a broken record there. Read the install guide. And then, yeah. And then it is time for us to, we are going to lay a few foundations before we do our blueprints this time, so the metaphor is falling apart a little bit, but bear with me here. We want to install all required service. You want to make sure that your existing system is up to date and protected. Back up everything that needs to be backed up. Make sure that you have enough room on your system and that you have new DASD available. Did I see a question?
Yeah, how do I determine whether or not required service? Let me just put it that way. I don't know where we are,
Right.
but I'm sure we're going to need some service.
Yeah.
So how do I determine, in order to go to 7.4, 7.3 must have the latest, I call it maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay, maintenance, might apply. I'm just using my terminology. I'm using ZOS terminology, even though I'm in a ZBM workshop.
It's okay. We can do our translations.
Thank you. So,
Yeah.
how do I get my 7.3 system at the latest maintenance level? And it has to be at the latest maintenance level before I can go to 7.4, correct?
Yeah. I mean, technically, you can still upgrade without doing that, but you'll be missing some of those features, some of that latest maintenance that you need in order to make sure that your system is running the best it can be. So yeah, go on.
Usually we say when you have the most recent RSU,
Yeah.
you're good to go.
Yeah.
And there it can make sense to look at the VMSS specific service. There's other stuff out there. However, if we would have critical service for SES or for an upgrade that is not included in the RSU, you can be reasonably sure that we would have published a red alert or something to make you aware of that. As a general rule of thumb, when you have the most recent RSU installed, you should be ready for an upgrade.
Thank you.
I'm going to repeat that for the benefit of the camera. The question was, how do I know that I have all the required service I need in order to upgrade my system? The answer is if you have the latest RSU installed, you're good to go for an upgrade, but also keep an eye out for any red alerts or critical service that you might need to put in. Oh, yes?
Sam, do you still ship the program directory with the new release, which indicates all of that information?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
we do.
thanks.
Yes.
I see check A bars.
Yeah.
How comprehensive is that?
How comprehensive is that?
I mean, would it cover all the questions that he asked? But
Check APRS does identify service that you might need to apply post-update, after your update.
okay.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
can happen is that you're upgrading a very, very recent 7.3 system to a 7.4 GA system, which might be less current from corrective service or security features than what you are running on 7.3 today. So this is really a good step to alert you that, hey, you are having service to apply after the upgrade to get as current as you have been on 7.3. There are going to be issues with that, with the change from 7.3 to 7.4, because linear service in different APR numbers, but generally this is true.
Awesome. I'm going to move along in the interests of time, but if anyone has further questions about the early setup, you are welcome to approach me after the session. Again, we're going to go to our blueprints. This flow chart is looking a lot more straightforward than our original one. There are 3 worksheets that we need to complete regardless of our system. The first one is going to be our installation source again. So we have chosen that CMS formatted mini disk for our source. But again, there are other options that would require their own information. Again, we're going to need to fill in the current system information. So this is the kind of thing that you would have put on your worksheet when you first installed the system. The system's default password, which will now become the logon password for any new user IDs that are created in the new release. Things like, where is our system config? How do we manage our user directory? What is the DASD type that we originally installed to it? So it's the very first, or the existing system information. And then we're going to have to look at our original volumes and see where there might be some space to install these new user IDs that I mentioned onto those existing volumes that are attached to the system. And now we have chosen 3390 for this example. So we're going to need the label and address for each of our new volumes. And I will go into those right about now. So this is our original 7.3 system that we just installed. So it has its own system residence, its paging, its spool, its common volume, and this 7.3 release volume. We are going to install this 7.4 work system, second level, on top of that existing system. And again, we're going to need 6 volumes, our residence, paging, spool, common, and 2 release volumes. That's 6. Too many fingers. Yeah, but we're going to need just 6 volumes for this example. And that is going to be installed second level. And what is going to happen during this upgrade installation procedure is that those 7.4 volumes become a part of our system that is now upgraded to 7.4. The other work system volumes go away. We can recycle them and use them for whatever is needed. And that 7.3 volume does remain attached to the system. But those new 7.4 release volumes do become a permanent part of the system. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. It's exactly the same as the procedure we did before. We're going to use instapipe. We're going to decode those files and then run dvd prime. These are, again, commands that you can grab out of the install guide. And then this time, when we plan for the upgrade procedure, we're going to use instaplan upgrade rather than instaplan traditional. And instaplan upgrade is going to first bring up this panel that says, you know what you're doing, right? You know what system you're trying to upgrade, right? So a lot of the existing information about where is your system config? How do you update your user directory? What's the default password? What DASD type are you using for that work system? So it's essentially verifying a lot of information about your existing system just in case you've changed anything from the defaults. And that's straight off of our worksheet too. Then the next thing it's going to do, again, is ask about these volumes, these 6 volumes that we've picked out to install our work system to. So the common, 2 release volumes, system residence, paging, and spool. This panel looks essentially the same as the traditional installation. But again, recall that these 2 release volumes are the only ones that are going to become permanent, relvol and relvol2. The rest of these we are using temporarily during this procedure and then can be restored to the DASD pool. Then again, we are going to use one of our worksheets. This next panel is the one that's asking for space on the existing volumes. The ones that are already a part of the system need a little bit of extra space for some of these new user IDs that are going to be created. If you are using a directory manager, you can probably just stick the label of the volume that you want to put it on. If you're not using a directory manager, you'll have to calculate where exactly on that disk you want to put it. But again, it's straight off of that worksheet you did already.
Those are cylinders?
The minimum volumes, or yeah, those are cylinders in this example. All right. And then again, it's going to show us a confirmation. You know what system you're upgrading. You know what you're doing. You know the consequences of your actions. You didn't hallucinate this. You didn't do this in your sleep. And assuming that you're in sound mind to upgrade your ZVM system, you can move right along. And then again, we are going to begin construction on that second level work system. So you're going to hit install. It's going to run for maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And then you're going to get this message pop up that says, we've installed your work system. You have that second level system running at the new release. Good job. And once you've done that, you can hit go, and it'll bring you back down to your first level system, or not necessarily to your first level, to the existing system that you're upgrading. It's going to bring you back to your MyGmaint ID. Yes?
Is this where I do the backup before I do the go?
Don't worry, I'll tell you exactly when to do the backups. But no, at this point, this is just letting you know that the install is completed. So go, all that's going to do is take you to back to your existing system. Right after this is when you're going to want to back up the system. There you go. So back up all those systems or all of the volumes that are important to your system, your user directory, your system config, those essential files, any other configuration files that you really want to back up. then again from this MyGmate user ID, you can start running stage 1 of the upgrade command. So this inst upgrade stage 1 prime is going to generate a stage 1 changes table. It's, I believe, $stage 1, $, and then the file type is $warn file. Or no, it's not. I lied to you. It's $table. And that's going to generate this table, which will tell your system all of the changes that it needs to make in the first stage of the upgrade. If you're happy with that, it's going to do this behind the scenes, unless it exits with an error, in which case you can go to the aforementioned warn file. But if it ends successfully, then you can move straight on to stage 1 commit, which is going to look at that stage 1 table file. It's going to implement each one of those changes. So it's going to run for a while, maybe 10 minutes, and it's going to tell you which line of the table it's running at any given point. I think goes by tens. So you're going to get a ton of output to your console, and it's going to tell you exactly what it did, and it's going to implement everything in that table. And at this point, you are halfway there. Your production was still running during that stage 1 of the upgrade. At this point, you might want to check if your house is floating about halfway up the hill. You might want to check that your furniture hasn't shifted.
Which way the wind's blowing, right?
Exactly. Check the wind speed. So look into some of those maybe licensed programs that you've installed. Check in with your external security manager, your directory manager. Check on your local mods. And at this point, if your RACF database was previously shared with ZOS, this is the point where you're going to need to convert it to be exclusive to ZBM. And once your house is back in order, you can start to take off. So this stage 2 of the upgrade procedure is when you will need to stop production. Do I see a question?
No.
Oh, just focusing. Excellent. That's what I love to see. So this is the point where you're going to need to stop production. Again, back up your system. And you're going to run, again, the installation upgrade stage 2 prime command. That will again generate a $stage 2 $, table with all of the changes that the second stage of upgrade will make to your system. Once that table is created, if it runs into any errors, you will find those in the warn file that's on MyGmate's 2 Charlie Fox 0 disk. But once that table is created successfully, you can move straight on to installation upgrade stage 2 commit. That's again going to let you know what line number it's at in the table, so you can go in and check on what changes it's made if you really want to. It's going to throw a ton of output onto your console. It's another one you're going to want to keep an eye on, so don't go to take a coffee break just yet. Did you have a question?
I do.
Yes.
Just for clarification, when you say
Yes.
stop production, are you saying fix it so no one can sign on, or do I take my production system down?
I'm saying, yeah. Yeah.
So in this context, what we would consider production is production workload running in your virtual machines.
Yeah.
For example, you're running a database processing transactions. This is the time when we would recommend that you select a different database in the cluster as primary, or you repoint DMQ to a different environment, or you take a disruptive service outage and shut down these virtual machines.
But just the virtual machine LPAR, not if you have a US LPAR or VSC LPAR, you don't have to shut those down.
Absolutely. This is purely a statement about your production workload running inside this ZBML.
I feel comfortable just shutting the users off. Second, I won't do this during prime time, so we're talking about, for me, doing it on a Saturday, and I want it so that nobody else can get in other than just me.
So you can do that,
Yeah.
but that really depends on the nature of the work that you're running. For example, if you're having disconnect within the service machines, disabling log onto the system isn't really going to do you any good, because these machines will just continue to run. So if you are having primarily human users working with the system, I think disabling the Class G users from logon is a good step to tell them, hey, what is going on. But our real main focus here is Linux virtual machines, ZOS virtual machines, providing services to applications in your company.
Just to repeat and clarify for the camera, the clarification was what do I mean by stopping production, with that clarification being stopping the production workload that is running on your ZVML par. All right. Yeah, so again, you're just going to run your installation upgrade stage 2 commit. It's going to make all of those changes as defined in your stage 2 table. Once that's done, run a couple more commands to reaccess some of those files and rerun the command to complete your upgrade. And this beautiful, beautiful message, installation upgrade ended successfully. I know. You love to see it. So do I. Once you're done, you're golden. You're at the top of the hill. Your house has all your beautiful, shiny new features. Some things might have fallen off the shelves, so you might want to clean up some of those post-upgrade tasks. Verify that the user directory is compatible with the new release. If you're using Dermate, you could just run like a derm edit, and I think it'll give you the return code 0 if you're all set. You can review your system config. All of the changes that were made to your system config are under this really big block comment that says, we just made these changes during the upgrade. 7.4 changes, neon sign. So they're really easy to find. So all of those under that, and you can reorganize that file if you want to, do what you need to do. You can check on that warn file just to see if anything needs to be addressed there. You can use this migra51dog utility in order to update the new maint 740s, that new maint IDs, 51dog mini disk with whatever inventory files you need. Honestly, for this example, I didn't even need to use it. I just think this screen is really, really pretty, and I wanted to show it to you all. I like the colors. I'm very easily pleased. And if your system has any specific tasks that it needs to be dealt with, maybe depending on your specific configuration, what pre-installed licensed programs you've enabled, etc. And then you're golden. You have a new upgraded system. So I know that procedure with the work system and moving the volumes back can be a little difficult to process on paper the first time, so I hope I've been able to clarify that a little bit for you and get some of those concepts into your head. Before I move on to tips and tricks, are there any questions on that procedure? Yes?
Okay, so with the upgrade,
Yeah.
You said that the only volumes we're going to keep are the release volumes, which makes
That's right.
sense to me. Can you actually just dedicate the mini disk or the real volume that you plan to put that on to the second level system when you're doing the install, or is that a bad idea and you want to have mini disks for that?
I'm sorry, I don't think I'm crossing the question. Could you rephrase the question?
When we were talking about building the upgrade system, it does the second level
Yeah.
install, and you were talking about all the disks you need to define to that system. You said that the M01 res, the M01 spool, et cetera, all of that can be cleaned up and returned to the pool when you're done.
Yes.
You say you're going to keep the release volumes, which
That's right.
makes sense. They're the new 7.4 release volumes.
Yeah.
What I was asking is, okay, well, those are going to end up as 7.4 release volumes on my first level system. Can I just pass through the real volume and dedicate it to the guest when I'm doing that install? Or do I want to make sure I'm using a mini disk when I do the install and the upgrade process will copy that back to another real volume?
I'm not sure I'm totally processing the question. When you install that work system, those release volumes are the ones that become a permanent part of the system.
So they are going to actually get a real volume attached then?
They are real volumes.
Okay. That's where I was misunderstanding, because I thought I was going to be defining mini disks for that.
Oh, no, that's my bad. No, there are real volume.
And from cylinder 0, not cylinder 1, right?
To the best of my...
There wouldn't be a real volume otherwise.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real volume that you're installing that work system to. Yeah.
Cool.
Does that answer the question?
Yep.
Awesome. Any further questions comments, heckling?
Tomato.
All right. So I want to spend these last couple of minutes just giving you a few of my beginner tips and tricks that I've learned through my early experiences working with the install team. So for beginners, from a beginner, when you're figuring out these DASD layouts, it can be a little mind-boggling. You're being given all these 4-digit numbers and what's going on. So make a little chart. It doesn't have to be anything formal. This was the chart that I used for my very first traditional and upgrade installation on the same half sheet of paper because the other 3/4 of the page were taken up by failed versions of this. So use some sort of chart, visualize what you want to do. You're welcome, I'll make these slides available to you. You're welcome to grab the slide that has the DASD diagram on it and label it yourself if you want to. Whatever works for your brain, but understand where you're installing your system to, and then keep that on record somewhere. This is pinned to the wall in front of my desk at my eye level. Because if you ever want to do, say, a further upgrade in the future, you're going to want that information. Again, have volumes reserved. If you're using volumes for backups, use higher numbered volumes. Because let's say in a hypothetical scenario, you're a recent hire to IBM, and you're making a backup of your system for educational purposes, and you use low numbers, and then you forget to detach them before you start the upgrade, and then the system starts looking for its volumes, sees them at low numbers, grabs the backup volumes, attaches them to your system. You try to do an upgrade, everything blows up and your entire team can't figure out what the problem could possibly be. Of course, this is an entirely hypothetical scenario. But
that's where you learn.
Yeah, that was a learning experience. But yes, be careful with your backup volumes. Use high-numbered volumes. Make sure you only attach them to do the backup and then put them back wherever they need to be. Also, when you're planning out this DASD layout, remember which volumes are going to become permanent. So like if you have a huge block of DASD that's all contiguous, all right next to each other, and you've got your system installed to half of them, and now you've got another half maybe devoted to this new upgrade, consider putting those release volumes maybe contiguous to your system or otherwise in some place that you're okay with becoming permanent. Because again, those other volumes can be returned to the DASD pool, you can reuse them. So carefully consider which ones you want to put as a permanent part of your system versus which ones you might want to reuse. Again, in a hypothetical scenario, many steps you might want to use multiple 3270 sessions. You might want to log into multiple IDs to take care of some of these tasks. Keep a close eye on what disks you have accessed from each, what ID you are logged into on each. Make sure you're doing the right things from the right one. Ask me how I know. And if you start seeing any access issues, do check your directory manager, whether it's online and operational. Thank you so much for joining me. These are some references that I used to build this presentation and that I recommend you would visit. The installation guide, again, I've said it a million times, is your ultimate reference. It is your Bible for this procedure. This presentation covers a lot of the concepts, hoping to make that installation guide a little more approachable. But there are different crucial steps that are missing from this presentation that are in the installation guide. So use this as a resource, but follow the steps in the installation guide if you don't want to have to open 15 service cases. The ZVM installation news will keep you up to date with any of, well, the latest news, any known issues, any workarounds. Use the program directory. I just linked one here because there's a million of them. But for your pre-installed licensed programs, they'll come with these program directories, and some of the appendixes will tell you important things you need to know. I linked Dermate here because that Appendix C is particularly important if you're using it and can make your life a lot easier for the upgrade installation. But there's a lot of these types of resources available to you. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I have ran a little bit over, so you're welcome to ask questions if you still have them, or come and talk to me, or shoot me an email. Thank you for being here.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Glad to hear it was a help.